says it's there. We go. Hi, welcome to our next webinar on civic engagement. I am Dr. Leah Tarwater. I'm being joined today with Mayor Brian Johnson. He is the mayor of Kennedale, and he is also the department chair at the South Campus of Government and Geology.
And somebody's knocking on our door.
Yeah, that's not distracting at all. I want to remind you that we have one more video after this, and that is the cost of free speech. That will be Thursday at 6 p.m. And then we will have our walk the vote November 1st and November 2nd, or exercise the vote. Okay, so today we're talking about local elections. And so we have some questions for Mayor Johnson that he is going to try to answer for us. And I'm going to begin with, why did you become interested in local government?
Well, I have a degree in political science, obviously, and you've always preached to students that they need to be involved in government. And if you're not, then you're being a little bit hypocritical. And I had moved to Kennedale, and Dr. Charles Overstreet, who teaches psychology, is a neighbor of mine. He said, "You got to run for office." I said, "Well, I never thought about doing that, but sure, I'll do it." And so I ran. It was a 3-person field. I came in third with 37 votes.
Nice.
But since I didn't win, because I wasn't well known in the community, because local elections are often how many people you know.
Absolutely.
The person who did win, asked me if I would serve on the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Oh, cool.
And so I said, sure, I'll serve. And I served 7 years there, and that's when I started getting much more interested in city government.
So that was kind of a stepping stone, planning and zoning.
Yeah, usually your stepping stones are somehow serving on one board or another.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good place to start. I want to run for the school board in my town sometime, but we live in a very small town that I'm not from. And it's like you said, it's who you know. So I've got to get to know a whole lot of people before I run. Yeah,
if you're running for the school board, then you want to make sure you go to the PTA meetings or PTO. You want to be supporting the Booster Club. That's what you're going to be looking for at that point.
That's good. That's good to know. Okay, so what motivated you to finally, after you've spent 7 years on the planning and zoning, to go ahead and run for mayor again?
Well, I didn't run for mayor. Originally, I was a council person. I was a council person for, let's see, I'm working on my third term as mayor. I was a council person from 2005 to 2014.
Okay.
So I had served there, but what had happened is that we had a council person arrested.
Oh.
And so that person had to resign.
I guess so.
Because you have to be held to a higher standard.
Right.
And so they said, hey, we need somebody else to run. And so I go, well, Brian's somebody else. And so they appointed me to fill out the term, which was only another 2 months. And then I ran again. But for my first 8 elections, I always ran unopposed.
Oh, that makes the running a whole lot easier when you're not unopposed.
Right, and when you run unopposed, they don't even have an election.
Oh,
right.
Which
tells you something about the state of local government, local elections, is that no one's even interested in running.
Right. I think a lot of people don't understand the importance of. So, segue into the next question. Yeah. Why do you think local elections and local positions are important?
Well, because when your trash gets picked up, when the police department is called out, when the fire trucks go, if you go to a park, or you're going to run over a pothole, or when you're taking a shower, or when you need some fresh water to drink, that's all going to be local government. That's going to be your city doing it.
Right.
I know national government's much more sexier because they talk about exciting things.
Right.
Talking about zoning laws, variances, tax abatements, economic development, for most people, not that exciting. Right. But it's very important. You can certainly make a difference in people's lives. I think that when I first got on council, it took me about 2 years to really learn stuff.
Yes.
In fact, I learned a lot about government from a firefighter who was on council, a guy named David Green, who at the time didn't have a college degree, but had experienced a lot of working in local government. Now he has a degree, and he has his master's, and he's teaching, which is
awesome.
Great. But I learned a lot from him, because you have to realize what you don't know, and you have to learn. And so being in local government means that you can make a difference in people's lives. So when I got into local government on city council, we had one park. We've got 3 now. We're in the process of creating a linear park. We've added more sidewalks to make it a more walkable city. We've done a lot of infrastructure improvements. Kennedale was a city in which we had a lot of ethical problems beforehand. We had our police chief go to jail for 3 years.
Wow.
We had 3 mayors having legal problems. And so we had to clean that up, and we did. In 2011, we got the TCMA, the Texas City Managers Association's City Council of the Year for ethical behavior.
Oh, that's awesome. So you really did turn it around.
Yeah, we did turn it around, and we tried to add new events. We've done a lot of stuff.
One of the things that you talked about was the city streets, and that's in the town that I live in. That's what everybody gripes about all the time, right? Because the potholes, and especially right now because it's rained a whole bunch, so there's potholes everywhere. But I think that's probably the biggest complaint I see there is, fix the streets, fix the streets. But everybody likes to complain about it, but not a lot of people want to jump in to do anything about it. But they don't necessarily have to run, but voting in local elections matters. Can you tell me why it's important that we vote in the local elections?
Well, as I said, in local elections, for the most part, the turnout is always going to be low. It's, I think in the last Fort Worth election last May, the turnout was 6%.
That's really low.
Yeah. So that means, 94% of the people didn't vote. They stayed at home. Now in Kennedale, my last election was the first time I actually had an opponent who told me the only reason I ran against you is I couldn't find anybody else to run. And we had 1,300 people vote, or about 26% of a turnout, and I won by 14 votes.
That's very close.
That's very close. And what can discourage people is these kind of races can be very nasty. They can be very personal.
Oh, wow.
But one thing you just have to learn is that that's just politics, and that's not who you are, and you let it roll off. My favorite story is the mayor of Forest Hill. I know Gerald Joubert, who ran for mayor, re-election last year's mayor, and at 7 o'clock they had told him that he had won by 3 votes. Then they called him at 10 o'clock at the election, say, we've got 6 more votes and you lost by 3 votes.
Oh, wow.
And he had a recount, and they found out he lost by 1 vote.
By 1 vote.
Yeah. And we had a school board member win by 3 votes out of over 1,000 casts.
Wow.
So local elections really is where your vote really has a big impact because people don't vote.
Absolutely. And so when people say, I don't vote because my vote doesn't matter, in the local elections, it really does matter. If somebody wins by 1 vote, your vote could have tied it up. And then the next person's vote could have been a win for that candidate. So
well, even when we, and it's very important in local elections, that is true, but go back to the 2000 election in which George Bush won Florida by 537 votes. Were there 538 Democrats who stayed at home that day saying my vote doesn't matter?
That's a great point.
Right. And so if they had gone out and voted, we would have had a President Gore. Would we have had an Obama? Would we have had a Trump? How does that, would there have been a war in Iraq? We don't know.
That would have changed a lot of stuff. Yes.
Right. But 538 people sat at home going, my vote doesn't count.
Right. Right. So your vote matters. Get out and vote. So tell us about your experience in running for office. I know you touched on that just a little bit about it, how running locally can get nasty. Did you have to do a lot of campaigning? What does it look like running for a local office?
Well, a lot of times it's just hard to find anybody to run. And people run for a variety of reasons. Some because they really care about the city. Some will do it because they see it as a stepping stone.
Right.
Some do it because they have a particular gripe. And usually those who have a particular gripe don't stay long because they find out that it's much more complicated than they think it is. And campaigning is, a lot of going door to door, and it's raising money. I think, we raised $5,000-6,000 for a job my job that pays $1 a month.
Really?
Yes. I haven't been paid in 12 months. I want my $12. But because things cost a lot of money. Signs cost money. To do a mailer in my city would, for likely voters would be about $2,500. So that costs money. Each yard sign is about $4 or $5 a piece. Right. And they disappear because the wind blows and those things break. So raising money is, some people will self-finance, but you have to go and ask money. And you got to go door to door, and talk to people. And sometimes you're going to have people that are rude to you. Right. Because they're mad, but you accept that, you're not perfect and you need to listen to what they have to say.
Absolutely.
And try to explain a position. You have to be able to do that fairly well.
So you talked about the pay. So clearly people aren't getting into local politics to get rich.
Right. Hopefully.
Hopefully. Do you think, though, because of that those who get involved in local politics really are in it more to change things or help improve things in the city? I know, people gripe about the reasons that people get into politics state and locally, but do you find that maybe at the local level motivations are a little more pure?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, right now I have 2 council members who I strongly disagree with. I think they're bad for the city. I think their policies are wrong. I don't like the way they treat the staff, but I don't think that they're bad people.
Right.
They're not my enemies. They're not corrupt.
Yes.
They just have a different point of view than I do. And they probably think I'm wrong.
Right.
But I'm not.
You're always right. Okay, so what does your job look like on a day-to-day basis?
Which one?
The mayor job.
Well, we meet about once every 2 weeks. And I'm in touch with the city manager usually every day. We'll call and talk for a few moments about, hey, this is coming up, what's going to be on the agenda. But also, when I first got on council, we had a new city manager. And he said we need to be more involved. And so now my day-to-day job is not only am I the mayor, but I also serve as the treasurer for the Southeast Transportation Partnership. I'm about to become the chair of the Mayor's Council for Tarrant County. I am the chair of the Tarrant Regional Transportation Coalition Board. I just took over for the member from Fort Worth. I'm a vice president for the Texas Municipal League, Region 8. I'm on the Mayor's Council Legislative Committee. I've served on some TML committees. I'm on the National League of Cities Youth Education and Families Council and the National League of Cities Transportation and Infrastructure Advocacy Committee. So
you're busy.
It's busy. And unfortunately, sometimes people, they don't see the value of some of these committees. And to me, it's valuable because one of our big issues has been the I-20, 287, 820 corridor, and now how that needs to be fixed. And that's finally on the agenda. And so being in these committees gives you a position to have a greater say.
Well, it's networking.
It's networking.
Right.
And so, and that sometimes requires me to travel. And often I pay for my own travel, even though we have the travel budget.
So there's more than just going and sitting in meetings with city council leaders, right, and more than just being in Kennedale. Right.
And the fun part is usually problem solving. I mean, if you can solve problems, that's the fun part.
Absolutely.
So right now, Kennedale politics is not good. It's rough. But we see those things from time to time in any city.
Yes.
Haltom City's having problems right now. I know Forest Hill's had some. Arlington's going through the term limit debate. Cities will go through these rough patches every once in a while.
So you told us a lot of important things that go on locally. Why do you think that people pay less attention to local politics or local government, or are less motivated to vote in these elections?
Well, it's not covered well.
It doesn't get the publicity.
No, unless there's some big event. I mean,
right. Or bad stuff.
So, yeah, it's going to be bad, right? Something like somebody has to go to jail or something.
Right.
And to be honest, we don't really have a local paper anymore.
Okay. A lot of towns don't anymore.
The Star-Telegram doesn't have the staff to monitor local government.
Right.
And I'll be the first to say we all need to be watched. I mean, it's great to have that oversight. Right. But they've cut back that staff so much. And so it's not in the news a whole lot and unless something really weird happens. And so it's not a selling point. And for television news, I mean, their goal isn't necessarily to inform, it's to get ratings.
Right.
And ratings aren't Kennedale's rezoning a piece of property. Right?
Yes.
So it's got to be something that's going to sell.
Right.
And there's so many municipalities in this area, you can't cover them all.
Cover all of them. Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of.
So they're going to hit the big cities. They're going to be talking about, red light cameras. That's an exciting thing.
Yes.
They'll probably start talking about the term limits issue in Arlington or the stadium. But the day-to-day business of fixing roads and fixing water and sewer lines, not so much.
What would you say is the biggest issue that faces most cities? Or biggest issues?
Infrastructure is one of the big problems. Infrastructure, because we have a crumbling infrastructure.
Can you define infrastructure for our students?
Nope. No, I'm kidding. I will.
Thanks for that.
Well, infrastructure is roads. It's your water and sewer lines, those kind of items.
Okay.
Bridges.
Right.
And so you have a lot of like sewer lines in the cities that are still clay pipes.
Right. And aging.
And they're aging. And so that's an inefficient system because rainwater leaks into it. And we have a lot of those kinds of problems. A lot of road problems that we see throughout cities. We know that nationwide, that's true. The American Society of Civil Engineers says that we need about $1 trillion in infrastructure.
Yes.
And so where do you get that money?
Right.
People don't want toll roads.
Right.
But they don't want you to raise the gas tax.
Right.
So
I'd rather you raise the gas tax than make me pay to drive the roads that I paid for.
Well, the problem is with the gas tax, and this is where it gets complicated, is that we now have cars that have better gas mileage.
That's a good point.
Right? The gas
tax isn't what it was.
No, it hasn't been raised since 1991.
Yes.
And it was, now it's worth about 9 cents. And then you have electric vehicles. How do you charge them?
Yes, that's a good point.
And so one of the ideas that's floating around there is a VMT, vehicle miles traveled. They would charge you by the miles traveled.
Oh, interesting.
But that brings up issues of privacy, right? People don't know what you know.
How are you going to know how many miles I traveled?
That's right. And so the infrastructure is a problem, and it's going to get worse because, we're not getting any help from the federal government.
Right.
The president's plan was $1 billion or $1 trillion, he said, but $800 billion was going to come from the states. And the other $200 billion was going to be over 10 years. Well,
that's helpful.
That's not a lot of money,
right?
Because we're really behind the curve,
right?
And so cities often have to borrow money through bonding to do these kind of projects. It's not like when the federal government borrows money, because they're borrowing money to pay employees. You should never be borrowing money to pay your operating costs.
Right.
When you're borrowing money to create capital improvement, streets and things like that, you're adding value.
Yes.
Well, for cities, one of the big talks in Austin talking points now is property cap appraisals. They want to limit how much property taxes can go up.
Right.
And right now there's an 8% limit, which could trigger a rollback election where citizens could vote to roll back the property tax increase if it goes over 8%.
Oh, wow.
They have to get a petition to do so. Well, what Austin wants to do is a way of taking away local control is, in my opinion, is that they want to make that 2.5%. And then it automatically triggers a rollback election automatically.
Wow.
And then that rollback election has to be approved by 2/3 of the voters, not a majority, but a super majority.
Yeah.
So 1/3 of the voters could stop you from building roads or streets or fixing sewers.
Right.
And especially if you're in a city where you have newer neighborhoods who don't have that problem, and you have the older neighborhoods
that do have all those problems.
Right. All it has to do is take 1/3 of those people saying, look, I don't want to pay that much more. Too bad for them. So it's an issue that's going to be in the legislature, and how do we fix it?
Basically boils down to we want all of it, but we don't want to pay for it as taxpayers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
That's what I see.
And the other issue is going to be water, of course, in this Metroplex region, is that, we don't have large water sources. And it takes a long time to build a reservoir.
Right.
Usually about 20, 25 years.
Wow.
And so, you're trying to convince people to conserve water. And that's hard to do in Texas.
Every summer.
Right.
Every summer, they're trying to convince people to conserve it.
And people are still moving into the Metroplex.
That's the point.
Which means that we've got a problem with housing. We certainly have a problem with transportation. And there have been several studies showing that where the jobs are, people are being created, is not where the people where you have the highest unemployment. So, for example, in Dallas, the highest unemployment is in South Dallas. The jobs would be creating in North Dallas. How do you get the people from South Dallas to those jobs in North Dallas? And that's the issue that cities are facing, is how do you get people from point A to point B? And so you think about mass transit, you think about ride sharing, you think about they're testing out pilotless drones where people can take a taxi, like an Uber taxi in the air.
That sounds scary.
Yeah, it sounds scary. Or drones and delivering things, what they call the last mile. Amazon Beam will drop the package at your house.
Yeah, definitely.
But then you got to regulate the drones as I go on. I'm droning on now. Is that you want drones flying everywhere? Right. And by the way, you cannot shoot down a drone. That's a violation of FAA rules, and that's a federal offense.
So don't do it.
Yeah, don't shoot down your drones.
But even if it's hovering over
my
your
backyard?
House,
that's right. Because cities cannot regulate the airspace. It's FAA. Cities can only regulate what things are on the ground.
So interesting. Okay. All right. So I think one last question, and that would
be. She has all these written down, by the way. This isn't really off the cuff.
Otherwise, I would forget all of them. How can people get involved locally?
Well, I think attending city council meetings, you know, and, you know, they sometimes stream them. We've been trying to get our stream, but right now our council doesn't seem to want to do it. But I'd like to see it streamed. You know, most places you can get set up for alerts where you get the council packet. Like in my city, you get to see the exact same thing that we see. We post on our website, or you can sign up for emails and have it emailed to you. You know, volunteer for a board. A lot of boards out there that need help. Parks board, library board, planning and zoning, boards of adjustments. There's board after board after board. And if you live in, you know, I mean, right now I'm part of Leadership Fort Worth, which is supposedly for young emerging leaders. That's only true in my case if I'm Benjamin Buttons and aging in reverse. But it's for people, there's all these things that you'll see in different cities that will encourage people to attend these classes or sign up for this program and teach them how to get involved. And so you get to hear from city leaders, you get to hear from school districts, you get to hear all those different perspectives.
That's awesome. So as somebody who lives out in the county, so I don't live in the city limits, do you have to live in the city limits to be on like planning and zoning and all of that stuff?
Most cities require you to live in the city. Yeah, where do you live?
Oh, I live out in Johnson County.
Okay. So out toward Joshua and all those
I live in Grandview.
Oh, yeah. Okay, Grandview. Yeah. But you're not in part of Grandview city limits?
I'm not.
Oh, well, then you're outside the county. We usually have to be part of the city.
Yes. Thinking about how much do you know about county stuff?
Do we have any questions? I see things popping up. Is there any questions popping up from them?
No, I haven't seen any. Austin says, so politicians think about stuff like how I get to work. Ooh, that's a good question.
Yes. I mean, that's because one of the things that we're seeing is that if you're driving, if you get a job and you're spending 30 to 40 minutes in your car getting to your job, that's wasted productivity for the employer, right? But and then on the way home, that's time you could be spending with your family.
Right.
And so employers are looking at, do cities have a good transportation network to get you from point A to point B? You know, I think Boeing wanted to come here at one point, but one of the reasons Boeing decided was there wasn't a good mass transit system in Tarrant County. And we still don't have a very good mass transit system.
Right.
I mean, they're working on a county-wide system. And so, yeah, we do think about how we can get people from point A to point B.
Awesome.
Because, and I'll talk about an Arlington program, which is really sort of an interesting program. Arlington runs something that they call VIA. Now, it's subsidized by the federal government and a bit of Arlington. But what they do in VIA, it's like Uber and Lyft, but you get the app, and if you're in Arlington, you can get a van to come pick you up, a Mercedes-Benz van.
Ooh,
I know,
fancy.
right? I know. With leather seats. Well, very nice.
Yes.
And they will take you to wherever you need to go for $3.
Oh, wow.
Right. And so if you're unemployed and, you know, or you want to go to school, you know, $3 is fairly reasonable.
Right.
And so
you can still get a job even if you don't own a car.
That's right.
You can still get to work.
You can still get to work. Or if you're a senior and you don't drive, you need to get to your doctor. Or you're a senior and you want to get to go shopping. And so they're expanding this VIA program, and the county is looking at trying to create something similar to that. So yeah, it's an exciting program. I wouldn't mind getting, you know, our city involved in something like that. Some other interesting ideas that they've come up with is, you know, car sharing. Because, you know, you drive to work and you leave your car in the parking lot.
Right.
Why not rent your car out to people who could come up, put in a code, and then drive your car someplace?
Very interesting.
Yeah, I don't know if I feel comfortable with that.
I was just thinking the same thing.
but 10 years ago, would you have thought when you got onto Uber or Lyft that you would feel comfortable getting in a car with a stranger and driving wherever you wanted to go?
Right. And just in their own car. It's not like it's a marked taxi. Yes.
But people do it all the time now.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a good point. All right. That's all the questions I have. I don't see any more popping up. Anything else that you want to share about local government?
Local government's important. It's the most important government. Even Thomas Jefferson said that. It's the one that affects your life on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
You know, if you're gonna get a ticket, it's gonna be local government. You have a fire, you're gonna be calling local government. You need an ambulance, it's local government. And so get involved. I mean, it's a way you can make a difference in your community.
Very good. Well, thank you all for joining us. Don't forget that we have our Exercise the Vote Thursday, November 1st at 11 and Friday, November 2nd at 1. You can meet Professor Wilson Mertens and myself and some other Connect faculty at the Trinity River campus at the coffee shop. And early voting has started, so make sure that you get out and vote. Y'all have a great day.